Hey, welcome to Practice Diary. That was a line by Tom Kennedy. It comes from a B-flat blues solo that he was playing that I've been working out. But it actually comes on the 2 chord, the C minor 7. So he's playing a lot of chord tones and chromatic approach notes to chord tones. But for me, the most interesting thing about analysing the way that he plays is not just to think about the notes that he's playing, but it's to look at how he arranges the notes with his left hand. Because his left hand technique is quite unusual for an electric bass player. And my theory is that the reason he has that unusual technique is it comes back to the fact that he started off as an upright bass player and he's adapted some of his upright bass techniques onto electric bass. So it's really interesting for me as an electric bass player to see how he's arranging these lines, because it's completely different from the way that I would do it. So for example, if I was to see this line written down and I didn't know how he played it, I would probably play it something like this. Okay, it just sits nicely in one position there. I can play everything pretty much in the same position without too much movement, nice and comfortable. But he plays it completely differently. He plays it like this. Now, there's 2 really interesting things about the way he plays it. Firstly, he's playing a lot of notes on just one string. So he's playing a lot of notes just on the first string. Have a look at this. Okay, all of that is played just on one single string. And another thing that's interesting to me is the way that he's using the open string first string, the note G. For an upright bass player, the easiest place to find the intonation on your notes, the easiest place to keep your notes in tune is staying as close to the nut as possible, right? So he likes to play in this part of the neck. Most upright bass players do. Most electric bass players don't play like that, especially when they're soloing. If you watch electric bass players jazz soloing, they spend a lot of time in this region of the neck. Sometimes they go all the way up here and they do all this kind of stuff. They don't spend a lot of time down here. But if you watch Tom Kennedy play, he spends most of his time down there, and he will position shift up when he needs to, but then position straight back again to get back to this position where he's most comfortable. He uses the open strings as a way of making the position shifting easier in a sense. So this note G, the open string first string, it's functioning as the 5th of the C minor 7 chord. So it's a chord tone, but he's using it to help him make these position shifts, to give him a little bit more time, bearing in mind that he's playing these lines at really, really high speed. So these extra little bit of time you can give yourself by playing the open string really helps you to get these accurate position shifts. So watch, he's starting up here on the 10th fret of the first string, and then he has a position shift. So he plays the open string, and then he shifts down to the 4th fret. And then again, another position shift, open string first, shift. Now that's a really common way for upright bass players to play. The open strings are so much more important on the upright bass than they are on the electric bass. And they have 2 functions on the upright bass. One of them is to give you time to make the position shift, but the other function of the open strings is to give you a reference note to make sure that your position shift is in tune. So if you play the open string first and then you shift position, you can hear whether that next note is in tune. So those open strings are so important on upright bass. So the way that he's approaching his left hand technique on electric bass is very similar to the way that an upright bass player would think. And a lot of people have tried to adapt these upright bass techniques onto electric bass, but Tom Kennedy has done it phenomenally successfully. If you watch him play, he plays so fast, and this line that I'm playing you now, he plays it incredibly fast. So he's got a really well organized left hand, and he's really on top of these position shifts. So here's a bit more of the blues that I worked out anyway, and I've tried to keep the fingering and the positions exactly the way that I've seen him play it.